Let me tell you something about the Galactic Council. We are idiots. Complete, absolute galaxy-grade morons. And I say this as someone who has served on the Council for 43 cycles, watching us make one terrible decision after another. But this takes the grand prize for stupidity. This is the moment we should have seen coming from 1,000 light years away. My name is Vorn, and I am what you might call the Council's record keeper. Though honestly, calling it a record is generous. It is more like a diary of disasters, a chronicle of catastrophic choices, a ledger of lunacy. You get the idea. The day everything changed started like any other boring rotation at Council headquarters. The Grand Chamber, all gleaming metals and floating platforms, hummed with the usual bureaucratic nonsense. Representatives from 742 species were arguing about trade routes. Again, always trade routes. You would think advanced civilizations would have better things to discuss, but no. Apparently, who gets to ship processed nutrients through the Andromeda bypass is the height of political discourse. I was sitting at my station, pretending to take notes while actually playing a strategy game on my datapad, when the alarm went off. Not the usual alarm, mind you. The special one. The one that only sounds when someone has done something phenomenally stupid on a species-wide scale. High Arbiter Cleth, a four-armed bureaucrat from Proxima 7 who took himself far too seriously, stood up on his platform. His main eyes were wide with what I can only describe as glee mixed with horror. That is never a good combination. Esteemed members, he began, his voice booming through the translation matrix, we have a situation. The humans have responded to our ultimatum. The chamber went quiet. You could have heard a microorganism sneeze. 3 months earlier, you see, the Council had made a decision. A terrible, horrible, no good, very bad decision. We had decided that humanity was a problem that needed to be dealt with. Why? Oh, the reasons were plentiful, according to the idiots who voted for it. Humans were expanding too fast. Their ships were too aggressive. They refused to follow proper diplomatic protocols. They kept asking uncomfortable questions about Council policies. They had the audacity to defend a member species that the Council had decided to punish. Worst of all, they laughed at Arbiter Cleth during a formal session when he suggested they should stop exploring and settle down in their little corner of space. To be fair, his suggestion was ridiculous. Telling humans to stop exploring is like telling water to stop being wet. It simply does not work that way. So the Council, in its infinite wisdom, had issued an ultimatum. Humanity had 30 days to dismantle their entire military fleet, surrender their advanced weapons technology, accept permanent observers on every human world, and agree to stop all expansion beyond their current territory. Oh, and they had to apologize. Formally. With witnesses, I voted against it. So did maybe 50 others. But we were outnumbered by the fearmongers and the power-hungry fools who saw humanity as a threat to their comfortable positions. Ambassador Trell from Earth, a woman named Victoria Hayes, had stood in that very chamber and said something I will never forget. She looked Cleth right in his smug face and said, "You are making a mistake. It's a catastrophic, irreversible mistake. If you do this, if you follow through with these demands, you will regret it for whatever remains of your existence." Cleth had laughed. Actually laughed. Is that a threat, Ambassador? Victoria had smiled. Not a happy smile. The kind of smile that makes your survival instincts scream at you to run. No, Arbiter, it is a promise. Then she left. Just walked out of the chamber, got on her ship, and went home. That was 3 months ago. Now, standing in that same chamber, Cleth was about to play Earth's response. His smugness had been replaced with something else, something that looked suspiciously like fear wrapped in a thin veneer of false confidence. The humans have sent a single transmission, Cleth announced, his voice trying to sound authoritative and failing miserably. I will now play it for the Council. The holographic display flickered to life in the center of the chamber. The image that appeared was not what anyone expected. It was not Victoria Hayes. It was not the human president or any other political figure. It was a man in what appeared to be a military uniform, sitting in what looked like a command chair. Behind him, through large windows, you could see space and stars, and what looked like hundreds, maybe thousands of ships. The man was older, maybe 60 in human years, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too much combat. His uniform was simple, black with minimal insignia, but he wore it like it was part of his skin. A name tag read Admiral Kovacs. He was smiling. That same smile Victoria had given Cleth. "Greetings, Galactic Council," the Admiral began, his voice calm, measured, almost friendly. "My name is Admiral James Kovacs, Supreme Commander of the United Earth Defense Fleet. I am responding to your ultimatum on behalf of humanity." He paused, leaning back in his chair, completely relaxed. Like he was discussing the weather, not the potential destruction of his entire species. "Let me start by saying we received your demands. We read them carefully. We discussed them at length. We considered every word, every implication, every threat hidden in your diplomatic language. And after careful consideration, mature deliberation, and serious thought, I am here to deliver humanity's official response." Another pause. He was enjoying this. You could see it in his eyes. No. That was it. Just no. Simple, direct, impossible to misinterpret. But he was not done. Oh no, he was just getting started. "Now, I know what you are thinking," Kovacs continued, that smile growing wider. "You are thinking we are bluffing. You are thinking we cannot possibly stand against 742 species. You are thinking we will see reason, back down, and accept whatever scraps you decide to throw our way. You are thinking we are just one small species, barely a few centuries into space travel, and we should know our place." He leaned forward, and his eyes went cold. The smile never left his face. But those eyes could have frozen a star. "You are wrong. Catastrophically, monumentally, historically wrong. And I am going to explain why." I felt a chill run down my spine. Around me, council members were muttering, some angry, some nervous. Cleth looked like he wanted to turn off the transmission, but he could not. Protocol demanded we hear the full response. "You see," Kovacs said, standing up and walking toward the camera, "you made several critical mistakes. The first was assuming we are weak because we are young. Humans have been fighting wars since before we discovered fire. We have been perfecting the art of violence for hundreds of thousands of years. We have destroyed ourselves and rebuilt ourselves so many times that conflict is encoded in our very DNA. You, with your peaceful centuries and your comfortable bureaucracy, you have forgotten what war actually means." He started counting on his fingers. "Second mistake. You assumed our military fleet was all we had. That the ships you could see, the bases you knew about, the weapons we demonstrated during our admission trials, that was everything. That was cute. Really, genuinely adorable. Do you know what humans call the military assets we show off during peacetime? We call it the tip of the iceberg. You should look up what an iceberg is. It is a floating mass of ice where only 10% is visible above water. The other 90%? That is hidden below, waiting to sink unsuspecting ships." Someone in the council chamber made a choking sound. Several others were frantically checking their data pads, probably trying to verify what Kovacs was saying. "Third mistake?" Kovacs held up 3 fingers. "You thought we would care about your threats. You thought we would fold because you said you would impose sanctions, blockade our worlds, use military force if necessary. Here is the thing about humans. We are really, really bad at backing down when threatened. It is a flaw, honestly. A sensible species would calculate the odds, see they are outmatched, and surrender. But humans? We hear threats and our immediate response is to figure out how to make you regret making them." He walked back to his chair and sat down, crossing his legs casually. "Fourth mistake, and this is the big one, you assumed we were alone. You thought Earth was just one planet, one species, fighting by itself. That was sloppy intelligence work, Council. Really sloppy. See, in the 3 months since your ultimatum, we have been busy. Very busy. We have been talking to other species. Species you have pushed around. Species you have exploited. Species that have been waiting for someone to stand up to you. The chamber erupted in noise. Council members were shouting, demanding explanations, trying to speak over each other. Cleth was hammering his gavel, a symbolic device that made a satisfying sound but accomplished nothing. Kovacs just waited, that infuriating smile still on his face. When the chamber finally quieted down, he continued, "We now have formal military alliances with 47 species. Not all of them are in your council. Many of them are species you rejected, ignored, or actively suppressed. They have been building up their own forces, waiting for an opportunity. We gave them that opportunity. Together. Our combined fleet numbers in the hundreds of thousands of ships. Our combined industrial capacity exceeds yours by a factor of 3. Our combined resolve? Well, that is incalculable." I looked around the chamber. Some council members were pale. Others were angry, their various skin colors shifting to aggressive hues. A few, the smart ones, looked resigned. They saw where this was going. But wait, Kovacs said, holding up a hand like he was stopping an imaginary protest. There is more. You assumed that our technology was inferior, that our weapons were primitive, that our tactics were simple. Again, wrong. Humans are really good at one thing above all others. We are excellent at learning from our enemies. Every species in your council has unique military advantages. The Vraks have their phase shields. The Korath have their plasma cannons. The Thelian have their stealth technology. The Proxima have their quantum torpedoes. He paused for effect. They had those advantages. Past tense. Because in the last century, we have been quietly reverse engineering, improving, and perfecting every piece of technology we could get our hands on. Sometimes we traded for it. Sometimes we stole it. Sometimes species just gave it to us because they liked us more than they liked you. The result? We now have weapons systems that combine the best features of 742 different military traditions. And we added our own special touch. Human creativity applied to weapons design is, well, it is terrifying if I am being honest. I believed him. Humans had a reputation for weaponizing everything. They had once turned a communications satellite into a kinetic bombardment system just to prove they could. They had invented something called a railgun that accelerated projectiles to a significant fraction of light speed, using nothing but electromagnetic fields. They had even weaponized their music during the admission trials, using sonic frequencies to disable an attacking pirate ship. Now, Kovacs said, his tone shifting from casual to deadly serious. Let me be absolutely clear about what happens next. You have 48 hours to withdraw your ultimatum, issue a formal apology to humanity and our allied species, and begin negotiations for a new council structure, one that treats all species as equals, not as subjects. The chamber exploded again. Cleth was on his feet, all 4 arms gesturing wildly. This is outrageous. You cannot dictate terms to the council. We are the supreme authority in this galaxy. Kovacs tilted his head like he was listening to a child throw a tantrum. I am not done, Arbiter. Please do not interrupt. Oh, the sheer audacity of it, telling the High Arbiter of the Galactic Council not to interrupt. It was magnificent. If you refuse, Kovacs continued, if you decide that your pride is more important than peace, then we will show you exactly why threatening humanity was the worst decision you have ever made. We will not attack your civilian populations. We will not target your homeworlds. We are not monsters, despite what your propaganda probably says about us. But we will dismantle your military infrastructure. We will blockade your key systems. We will cripple your ability to enforce your will on anyone. And we will do it in a way that makes it very, Very clear that the age of the Council dictating terms to the galaxy is over. He stood up again, straightening his uniform. You wanted humanity to know our place? Fine. Our place is standing up for species that cannot stand up for themselves. Our place is refusing to bow to bullies, no matter how big they are. Our place is proving that might does not make right, and that freedom is worth fighting for. That is our place. And if you do not like it, well, you have 48 hours to adjust your expectations. Kovacs took a step closer to the camera, his face filling the screen. To any individual council members listening to this, the ones who voted against the ultimatum, the ones who tried to stop this madness, we see you. We remember. When this is over, when the dust settles, we will remember who stood for principle and who stood for power. There will be a place for you in whatever comes next. Then his expression softened, just slightly. To the species under council control who have been watching and waiting, who have been hoping for change, this is your moment. We are not asking you to fight. We are not asking you to risk everything. But if you want freedom, if you want a voice, if you want to be treated as equals instead of subjects, stand with us. We will protect you. We will fight for you. And together we will build something better. He straightened up, gave a casual salute, and then delivered the final blow. Oh, and one more thing. I know you are probably scrambling to mobilize your fleets right now. I know you are calculating response times, organizing strike forces, preparing for war. So let me save you some time. Look at your long-range sensors. Look at the edge of your core systems. Look at the space around your most important worlds. Silence. Dead, heavy silence. Then the sound of data pads activating all at once. Council members checking their systems, verifying sensor data, and then gasps. Actual, audible gasps of shock. That is right, Kovacs said, his smile now a full grin. We are already here. Those ships you are detecting, those are ours. We have been positioning forces for the last 3 months. Ever since your ultimatum. We used your own arrogance against you. You were so confident we would surrender that you never bothered to check if we were preparing for war. That was mistake number 5, by the way. Never underestimate an enemy who has nothing to lose and everything to fight for. The hologram flickered, but Kovacs was not done. 48 hours, Council. Choose wisely. Because if you choose war, if you decide that your pride is worth more than peace, then you will learn what every enemy in human history has eventually learned. We do not start fights, but we sure as hell finish them. And when we do, when the fighting finally stops, the galaxy will remember that the Galactic Council decided to threaten humanity. And they will remember what happened next. The transmission ended. The hologram faded. The chamber sat in stunned silence. Then Cleth spoke, his voice shaking slightly. This is propaganda, empty threats. They cannot possibly have forces in position around our core worlds. Our defenses would have detected them. Admiral Torque, military commander of the Council forces and generally the only competent person in the Defense Division, stood up. He looked grim. Actually grim. This was a being who had fought in 17 campaigns and never showed fear. He was showing it now. High Arbiter, Torque said slowly, I am receiving reports from sensor stations across our territory. The humans were not bluffing. We are detecting massive fleet concentrations at the edge of 42 core systems, but they are just sitting there, waiting. How? Someone screamed. How did they get past our sensors? Torque pulled up a tactical display. The hologram showed the galaxy, with red dots marking human fleet positions. There were hundreds of them. They formed a network around Council space, perfectly positioned to strike at every major military installation, supply depot, and strategic resource. They used stealth technology we did not know they had, Torque explained, his voice hollow. They moved slowly, over weeks, positioning forces using inactive sensors and cold running. They were hiding in plain sight, looking like debris fields, asteroid clusters, spatial anomalies, By the time we realized what they were, it was too late. I looked at the display and did some quick calculations. If the humans attacked now, the Council fleet would be cut off from reinforcements. Supply lines would collapse within days. Even if we could mount a defense, we would be fighting on multiple fronts simultaneously while the humans controlled the initiative. We had lost before the war even started. Cleth was still trying to maintain control. We outnumber them. Our fleet is still larger. We can crush them if we mobilize everything. Can we? Torque asked quietly. They claim to have allies, 47 species. If even half of that is true, we are evenly matched at best. And they have been preparing for this fight. We have been preparing for trade negotiations. There is a difference. Someone else shouted, "We should attack now, before they are ready." Torque looked at the speaker like they were insane. They are already ready. That is the point. We are not. We would be walking into a massacre. The debate raged for hours. Some wanted to fight. Some wanted to negotiate. Some wanted to pretend the transmission never happened and hope the problem went away. That last group was particularly delusional. I sat at my station, making notes, recording everything. This was history happening in real time. The moment when the Council's absolute authority cracked. The moment when one small species said no and backed it up with enough firepower to make it stick. 48 hours. That was all we had to decide the fate of the galaxy. And as I looked around at the chaos, at the fear, at the anger and denial, I realized something. Kovacs was right about everything. We had made mistakes. We had underestimated humanity. We had let our pride blind us to reality. And now we were going to pay for it. The question was, how much? Would we swallow our pride, accept the new reality, and negotiate? Or would we choose war, convinced that our size and power would prevail? I looked at Cleth, at his angry face, at his rigid posture. He was not going to back down. Pride would not let him. We were going to war. Well, and despite everything, despite the fear and the uncertainty, part of me was curious. Curious to see if humans were as dangerous as they claimed. Curious to see if one small species really could stand against an empire. Curious to see what happened when an unstoppable force met an unmovable object. I had a feeling I was about to find out. The timer started. 48 hours until humanity's deadline. 48 hours until the galaxy changed forever. 48 hours until we learned whether Earth's final transmission was a bluff or a promise. Something told me it was a promise. And promises, especially human promises, have a nasty habit of coming true. Hour one of the countdown, and the council chamber looked like someone had kicked over an anthill. Everyone was running in different directions, screaming orders, contradicting each other, and generally proving that 742 species working together is about as effective as trying to organize a supernova. I stayed at my station, watching the chaos unfold like it was a particularly entertaining disaster broadcast. Which, honestly, it was. High Arbiter Cleth had called an emergency military session, but Admiral Torque was standing at the tactical display, pointing at various fleet positions and explaining, in excruciating detail, why attacking the humans right now would be suicide. Cleth was not listening. He never listened. That was kind of his thing. We cannot show weakness. Cleth shouted, all four arms flailing dramatically. If we back down now, every species in the galaxy will think they can challenge us. The Council's authority will collapse. The Council's authority is already collapsing, I muttered under my breath. Nobody heard me. Or if they did, they wisely chose to ignore me. Torque pulled up a simulation. It showed what would happen if the Council fleet engaged the human forces. The result was not pretty. Actually, it was horrifying. Red lines indicating human attack vectors cut through blue Council formations like a hot knife through frozen hydrogen. Casualty projections scrolled along the bottom. They were not encouraging. We would lose 60% of our forces in the first engagement, Torque said flatly. And that is assuming the humans do not have reinforcements waiting. which they probably do, because they have been planning this for months while we were arguing about trade routes. Several council members looked ill. A few of the more cowardly ones were already slipping toward the exits. I did not blame them. When the ship is sinking, the smart rats leave first. Then we call up reserves. Cleth insisted. Every member species contributes their full military. We overwhelm them with numbers. That will take weeks, Torque replied, his patience clearly wearing thin. We have 48 hours. Well, 47 now. And even if we could mobilize everything in time, the humans would simply adjust their strategy. They are not stupid, Arbiter. They have been studying us for a century. They know exactly how we think, how we fight, how we organize. Meanwhile, we know almost nothing about their true capabilities. That is called a strategic disadvantage. A representative from the Korath Dominion stood up. Her name was Vesla, and she had the distinction of being one of the few council members who actually used her brain. Has anyone considered that maybe, just maybe, Admiral Kovacs was telling the truth? That they have 47 allied species? That would change the numbers considerably. Impossible. Someone shouted. Which species would be foolish enough to side against the Council? I could have answered that. Any species the Council had ever pushed around, exploited, or treated as inferior. Which was, let me check my notes, basically everyone who was not on the Council. The list of potential human allies was probably longer than the list of species who would actually fight for the Council if things got bad. Cleth was still ranting. We issue an ultimatum of our own. They have 24 hours to stand down or we destroy Earth. The chamber went silent. Even the most bloodthirsty warmongers looked uncomfortable. Threatening to destroy a homeworld was crossing a line that most civilized species did not cross. It was the kind of thing that got you remembered in history books as the villain. That would be a war crime, Vesla said quietly. Targeting civilian populations, especially homeworlds, violates every treaty we have signed. They started this. Cleth screamed. His face had turned a disturbing shade of purple. I made a note to check if his species had issues with stress-related health problems. They are the ones threatening us? Actually, I said, surprising myself by speaking up, they threatened our military infrastructure. They specifically said they would not target civilians or homeworlds. That is an important distinction. One that makes them look significantly more civilized than we do right now. Cleth glared at me with all three of his primary eyes. Record Keeper Vorn, your commentary is not required. My job is to record everything, I replied calmly, including the moment when the High Arbiter suggested committing genocide. That seems historically significant. The chamber erupted again. Some members were shouting support for Cleth. Others were condemning him. A few were trying to broker compromise positions. One representative, I swear this is true, suggested we just pretend the whole thing was a misunderstanding and invite the humans to lunch. I kept recording. Someone had to document this disaster for future generations, assuming there were future generations, which was looking increasingly uncertain. Hour 12. The deadline was shrinking fast, and the Council had accomplished exactly nothing except arguing. Shock, surprise, amazement. I decided to do something productive and started pulling up intelligence reports on humanity. Real intelligence, not the propaganda the Council liked to circulate. What I found was disturbing. And by disturbing I mean it confirmed everything Admiral Kovacs had said. Humans had been preparing for this confrontation for decades. Maybe longer. They had established trade relationships with hundreds of species, many outside Council control. They had been sharing technology, building goodwill, and generally acting like decent neighbors. Meanwhile, the Council had been issuing demands and collecting tribute like some kind of galactic protection racket. The species most likely to support humanity. The Thelian Confederacy, who the Council had sanctioned 3 times for refusing to share their stealth technology, and the Vrax Collective, who the Council had forced to accept unfavorable trade terms, the Korath Dominion, who Vesla represented, had been pushing for council reform for years and been ignored. The list went on, and on, and on. 47 allied species suddenly seemed conservative. The humans could probably pull together twice that many if they tried hard enough. I found another interesting file. Human military doctrine. Apparently they had a saying, peace through superior firepower. Another one was walk softly and carry a big stick. And my personal favorite, never fight a land war in Asia. I had no idea what Asia was, but the sentiment was clear. Humans thought about warfare in ways that most council species had forgotten centuries ago. They also had this concept called mutually assured destruction. The idea was that if both sides had enough weapons to annihilate each other, neither side would actually start a war because the cost would be too high. It was insane. It was brilliant. It was very, very human. The council had assumed its size and power would deter any conflict. Humans had assumed conflict was inevitable and prepared accordingly. Guess which approach was working better right now? Hour 24. Halfway through the deadline, and the galaxy was holding its breath. Reports were coming in from across council space. Human fleets were still in position, making no aggressive moves, just sitting there like patient predators. It was unnerving. If they had attacked immediately, the council could have rallied around defending against aggression. But this calm, calculated waiting. It was psychological warfare at its finest. Several council member species had quietly started moving their civilian populations away from military installations. Smart. If fighting started, those installations would be the first targets. The fact that entire governments were evacuating their own people suggested they did not have much faith in the council's ability to protect them. Cleth was still refusing to negotiate. He had locked himself in his private chambers and was consulting with his inner circle. Rumor had it they were planning some kind of surprise attack. I gave it a 30% chance of working and a 90% chance of making everything catastrophically worse. Torque had stopped trying to reason with anyone. He was just preparing his forces for the inevitable. I respected that. When diplomacy fails, at least someone should be ready for what comes next. I received a private message on my data pad. It was from Vesla. Lorne, we need to talk. Private channel. Now, and Jens. I switched to encrypted communication. I am listening. There is a group of us, council members who voted against the ultimatum, who see where this is heading. We are trying to organize a vote of no confidence against Cleth. If we can remove him from power, we might be able to negotiate with the humans before the deadline expires. How many? I asked. 53 representatives. We need 75 for a majority. That is not enough. I know, but if we can get 22 more, we can stop this madness. Can you help? You have access to all the records. You know which representatives are reasonable. You know who might be convinced. I thought about it. This was not technically part of my job description. Record keepers were supposed to observe, not participate. But then again, what good were records if there was nobody left to read them? Send me your list. I will see what I can do. I spent the next 6 hours contacting representatives, pulling up voting records, finding leverage. It was exhausting. Most of them were too scared to act. Some agreed but wanted assurances we could not provide. A few told me to go perform anatomically impossible acts on myself. By hour 30, we had 68 votes, 7 short of what we needed. Hour 36. Time was running out, and I was getting desperate. The tactical situation was deteriorating. Human forces had begun active sensor sweeps, no longer hiding. They wanted the council to see exactly what they were facing. It was intimidating. Hundreds of thousands of ships, all perfectly coordinated, all waiting for the order to attack. Council forces were trying to respond, but it was chaotic. Different species had different command structures, different communication protocols, different ideas about strategy. The humans had turned our diversity, something we always praised, into a weakness. One command structure, one chain of command, one unified plan. Simple, effective, terrifying. I got another message. This one was not from Vesla. It was from an unknown source, heavily encrypted. I almost deleted it, thinking it was spam. But something made me open it. The message was short. Record Keeper Vorn, you are trying to prevent a war. Admirable. But you should know the truth. The Council has already made its decision. In 6 hours, they will launch a preemptive strike against human positions. Admiral Kovacs was right. Your leaders would rather destroy the galaxy than admit they were wrong. You cannot stop this. But you can survive it. When the fighting starts, to get to the Korath embassy. They are evacuating non-essential personnel. We have arranged passage for you. You deserve to live long enough to record what happens next. A friend. I stared at the message for a long time. Who sent it? How did they know what I was doing? And were they right about the Council's plans? I did the only thing I could. I contacted Torque directly. Admiral, I need to know something. Is Cleth planning a preemptive strike? There was a long pause. Then, how did you hear about that? My stomach, or the equivalent organ my species has, dropped. So it is true. He gave the order an hour ago. We launch in 5 hours. I tried to talk him out of it. He would not listen. He thinks a surprise attack will catch the humans off guard. Let us destroy their forward positions before they can respond. That is insane. They have been preparing for this for months. You really think they did not plan for a preemptive strike? I know, Torque said, and he sounded tired, ancient, defeated. But I follow orders. That is what soldiers do. Even when the orders are suicidal, you could refuse, you could tell your officers the truth, and cause a mutiny? Fracture the Council even further? At least if we fight together, we have a chance. If we fall apart before the first shot is fired, we have already lost. I wanted to argue, but he was right. The Council was trapped by its own structure, too big to change direction quickly, too divided to act decisively, too proud to admit mistakes. We were going to war, and we were going to lose. I made my decision. I contacted Vesla. The vote is irrelevant. Cleth is launching an attack in 5 hours to get anyone who will listen to evacuate. The humans are going to respond, and when they do, being anywhere near a military installation will be fatal. Then I grabbed my personal files, erased my workstation, and headed for the Korath embassy. I had a job to do, recording history, even if that history was a tragedy. Hour 43. The Council fleet began its approach, thousands of ships moving into attack positions, targeting human forces around key systems. It was an impressive sight. Overwhelming firepower, coordinated movements, the combined might of hundreds of species working as one. It should have worked. It did not. The moment the Council fleet crossed into weapons range, the humans moved. Not attacked. Moved. Every single human ship simultaneously shifted position. They used some kind of coordinated jump drive technology that let them teleport short distances instantaneously. 1 second they were in front of the Council fleet. The next second they were behind it, and above it, and below it. The Council fleet was surrounded. Then the humans opened fire. I was watching from the Korath embassy, monitoring military channels, recording everything. The battle, if you could call it that, lasted 17 minutes. 17 minutes of the most one-sided engagement I had ever witnessed. Human weapons were terrifying. They used directed energy beams that cut through shields like they were not there. They used kinetic missiles that accelerated to nearly light speed and punched through armor like tissue paper. They used something called electronic warfare that shut down entire ships without firing a shot. But the worst part, the humans were precise. They targeted weapons systems, engines, command centers. They disabled ships instead of destroying them. Every vessel they hit was left floating dead in space, crew alive, but unable to fight. It was mercy and dominance combined. They were proving they could win without massacring their enemies. The Council fleet broke. Ships started retreating, surrendering, or just going silent. The grand military might of the Galactic Council, the force that had maintained order for 1,000 years, collapsed in less than 20 minutes. Cleth tried to issue a general retreat order. The humans jammed the transmission. They wanted individual captains making the decision to surrender. They wanted the Council forces to understand they had been beaten not because of one disastrous command, but because they were fundamentally outmatched. Hour 44. The battle was over. The war was over. Everything was over. Admiral Kovacs appeared on every communication channel in Council space simultaneously. That same calm face. That same knowing smile. Greetings, Council. As promised. We have demonstrated what happens when you threaten humanity. Your fleet is disabled. Your military infrastructure is under our control. Your ability to enforce your will is gone. But your people are alive. Your worlds are untouched. Your civilians are safe. Because unlike you, we keep our promises. He paused, letting that sink in. Now, here is what happens next. The Galactic Council, as it currently exists, is dissolved. In its place, we will establish a new governing body, one where every species has an equal vote, one where decisions are made by consensus, not dictation, one where strength is measured by cooperation, not coercion. We call it the Galactic Assembly, and humanity will be one voice among many, not special, not superior, just equal. Another pause. Any species that wishes to join is welcome. Any species that wishes to remain independent is free to do so. There will be no tribute, no forced alliances, no ultimatums, just mutual respect and voluntary cooperation. That is the future we are offering. Then his expression hardened slightly. But make no mistake, if any species, any government, any organization tries to return to the old ways, tries to dominate others through force, tries to build another empire, we will stop them. Humanity and our allies will be the guardians of freedom in this galaxy, not rulers. Guardians. There is a difference. Learn it. The transmission ended. I sat in silence, processing what I had just witnessed. The entire power structure of the galaxy had just been dismantled and rebuilt in less than 2 days. Centuries of Council control, gone, just like that. My datapad chimed. Another message from the mysterious friend. Well done surviving. Now comes the hard part. Recording what comes next. Good luck, Vorn. The galaxy is going to need honest historians. The days that followed were chaos. Good chaos, mostly, but still chaos. Cleth was arrested by his own species and charged with incompetence. Torque was offered a position in the new Assembly's defense force. He accepted. Several council members fled to remote systems. Most accepted the new reality and joined the Assembly. The Galactic Assembly held its first session 3 weeks later. Every species, even tiny ones with populations in the millions, got one vote. Decisions required 75% agreement. It was slower than the old council. It was messier. But it was fair. Humanity kept its promise. They did not seek power. They did not try to dominate. They participated as equals. Admiral Kovacs even stepped down, saying his job was done. The man who had conquered the council did not want to rule it. Typical human paradox. I was appointed as the official historian of the Assembly. My job was to record everything, preserve the truth, and make sure future generations remembered how we got here. It was the same job I always had, but now it felt important, meaningful. 6 months after the revolution, I was reviewing old files and found something interesting. A classified council intelligence report from 10 years ago. It was an analysis of humanity, conducted by a team of xenop psychologists and military strategists. The conclusion was chilling. We human beings represent a fundamental threat to any authoritarian power structure. Their cultural values prioritize individual freedom, collective action against oppression, and an almost pathological refusal to submit to unjust authority. They have a saying that summarizes their nature: "Give me liberty or give me death." This is not rhetoric. This is a fundamental aspect of their psychology. Any attempt to dominate or subjugate humanity will result in violent resistance, regardless of the odds. Recommendation: treat humanity as equals and partners. Any other approach will end in conflict we cannot win. The report was dated 10 years before the ultimatum. Cleth had seen it. He had read it. He had ignored it. We had known. We had been warned. And we had done it anyway. I included the report in my historical record. Future generations needed to understand. We were not defeated by superior technology or overwhelming numbers. We were defeated by our own arrogance. We assumed size meant power. We assumed authority meant respect. We assumed compliance could be demanded. The humans taught us a better way. Not through lectures or diplomacy. Through demonstration. They showed us that real strength comes from principle. That real power comes from cooperation. That real authority comes from earning it. And they did it by being exactly what they claimed to be. Not conquerors. Not saints. Just people who refused to bow and had the courage to back it up. I finished my report on the revolution and submitted it to the Assembly archives. The title was simple: Earth's Final Transmission: How One Species Changed the Galaxy by Refusing to Kneel. It became required reading for every new Assembly member, every diplomat, every military officer, everyone who wanted to understand how power really works. Because the Council learned something important that day, something humanity already knew. You can conquer people with force. You can control them with fear. But you cannot keep them that way forever. Eventually, someone will say no, and if enough people stand with them, if they are willing to fight for freedom, empires fall. The Galactic Council fell in 48 hours. The Galactic Assembly rose from its ashes, and humanity, the species everyone underestimated, the species that refused to back down, became not the rulers of the galaxy, but its conscience. Looking back, Admiral Kovacs was right about everything. We made mistakes. We underestimated them. We threatened them. And we paid for it. But here is the thing. The humans could have destroyed us. They could have taken revenge for centuries of arrogance. They could have built their own empire and ruled with an iron fist. They chose not to. That choice, more than any battle or ultimatum, proved they were exactly what the galaxy needed. Not masters, not servants, partners, equals, friends. And as I sit here recording the last entry in this historical document, I realize something else. The humans did not just change the galaxy, they saved it from itself. So to whoever reads this in the future, to whatever species looks back on this moment in history, remember this. The Galactic Council fell because it forgot a simple truth. Freedom is not something you can take away with threats. Justice is not something you can ignore because it is inconvenient. And equality is not something you grant as a privilege. It is something you recognize as a right. The humans knew this. They lived it. And when they had to, they fought for it. That is why they won. That is why we lost. And that is why the galaxy is better for it. End of record. Historian Vorn, Galactic Assembly. Year 1 of the New Age.